Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. Join me as we have a real-life discussion on how to change your life by changing your thoughts. Remember, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth. Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. My name is Sloan Fremont, and I'm your host. This is our last episode of 2020. We made it. We're here. We survived. And I thought a lot about what I wanted to talk about on this final episode of 2020. And our topic this week is 2020 was an inside job. And I'll tell you why. As I was thinking about everything that I wanted to talk about, because there was so much to say, right? There was just so much that could be said about this year. And so I thought about starting with the obvious, right? All the negative that went on this year, right? And we could rail for hours about this, right? Like hours. And we would be like rightfully so in doing that, right? We would be, I mean, there's so much to say and there's so much injustice and so much of everything that we could rail about as we think about it being negative. But I didn't want to leave you with something negative at the end of this year. There's enough of that everywhere else. You can go everywhere else for that. And for this show, I try as hard as I can not to do that. I want to be the light. I want to be another perspective that helps you think about things a little bit differently and puts things in at least a little bit more of a positive frame of mind on the show. So then I thought about switching gears and talking about some of the positive things that happened this year, right? Like, so I thought, okay, well, there were some positive things that happened, in my life this year. But then I was thinking about that, and that didn't really feel right either, because 2020 was so personal for all of us. I mean, we all, as a collective, went through this mass, trauma, right? This mass epic level of trauma that none of us ever dreamed would ever happen in our lifetime. And, as I was thinking about things, and I know, we faced this in so many different ways, right? There were so many levels to this. There were so many layers that brought us, to our knees probably multiple times. At least I know it did for me. And, somebody who had a job that they hated, that they ended up losing, might have been like the best thing that ever happened to them. But then somebody else who had a job that they lost, that could have been, the worst thing that happened for them. So I felt like 2020 was so personal, and actually digging into that level of detail, it just didn't feel authentic to me. I think, at least for me, there's things that I'm still processing about this year. There's things I can't even put into words that happened, right? Like I can only understand it by the way I feel, like my emotions that are tied to it. Like there's so much there that it's to me, it's too personal to talk about, because it's our own, it's how we all dealt with it in our own way. And so what I thought I would do is close 2020 by reminding you who you are. It's been really, really easy this year to throw everything out that we thought we knew. And some of that stuff we did need to throw out. But even our core beliefs, it became really easy to discard our core beliefs and start to really fall into the traps of the negativity, the fear, the anger, right? All of the division, all of that kind of stuff. And I've said this before about how, for me at least, my core beliefs, they didn't change. I still believe them, but they just got pushed aside this year as all of this unfolded. And so I thought it would be good for all of us to come back together and really center ourselves on those core beliefs of knowing who we are, right? Just knowing who we are as people, as who we are as part of the collective consciousness, part of the energy of the world, right? Like who we are and what we believe and what we stand for, right? I think that was another theme for this year, was deciding what you stand for. And so something that I've been doing lately as a reminder of this for myself to remember who I am is when I start my day, I remind myself of this. I say this phrase to myself. I'm a sovereign being and I create my own reality. Right there, when I say those words, I'm a sovereign being and I create my own reality, instantly I feel at ease. Like that's what works for me, right? Like that sentence for me just settles me. It puts me right back into it pulls my energy into me. And it's, cause it's easy for us to give our energy away to other things, right? It's easy to give our energy away to the fear, to the corporate media with their incessant cries for, you should believe this or you should believe that, right? Or, our neighbor is doing this, or, the injustice that we saw over here doing that, right? It's really easy to give that energy away. And when we do that, it takes us out of our center. It gets us off balance. It gets us, like wobbling, right? Like you're on a tightrope and you're wobbling back and forth. And saying that statement to myself, I'm a sovereign being and I create my own reality, instantly pulls me back to my center. And as we've talked throughout this year, and I continue to say to you on the show, everything that I say is what works for me, right? It's my story. It's my truth. And what I offer you is just another perspective. I offer you more information for you to consider and to take what works for you and leave the rest. So as we're talking about things today, if there's something that the idea resonates with you, but maybe the exact words I use don't resonate, I would encourage you to find your own way with this, right? I always say on this show, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth. And that's your cue to find what works for you, right? If something resonates, but it's not quite perfect, then explore that and figure that out for you. So I did a show about sovereignty. We had a whole episode about that, about claiming your sovereignty. And I just wanted to I'm not going to rehash the whole show, but I just wanted to remind you of what that means, of being a sovereign being. And maybe if you didn't listen to that episode, there's several episodes I would encourage you to go back and listen to from this year. The big ones that stand out to me are the Claim Your Sovereignty show I did, Order Taking and False Gods. I did a show called that. I did one called Dipping Out of the Matrix. And there was another one called Free Range Slaves in the Media Plantation. All of those I would highly encourage you to go back and listen to. Even if you listen to them once, you might find you get something else out of it now at this point in time. So I just wanted to remind you again of this. I'm a sovereign being and I create my own reality. Sovereignty means you're the king of your own. You're the king or the queen of your own castle, right? You run your own show. You, as a human, you came into this world with the rights to be an independent and free person. You can think what you want. You have choices. You're allowed to explore those choices. You're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to live as a free human. And nobody can take that from you. No one can interfere with your God-given consciousness unless you let them, right? And it's been really easy this year for all of us to let the outside influences try to break us down or try to, knock us off our game or knock us off that tightrope, right? And no one can interfere with that unless we let them. And so anytime we give our power to someone or something beyond ourselves, then we become enslaved by that. And so I wanted to remind you today, as we close out 2020, that you're not a slave to anything. You're not a slave to the media. You're not a slave to your job. You're not a slave to anything unless you want to be, right? We all have choices. One of my favorite Abraham quotes is, "You're so free you can choose bondage," right? You're so free in this world that you can choose to feel like you are trapped in a job that you hate, a relationship you can't stand, a town that you wish you didn't live in, right? Any of that. And that's just not true. We are free humans. We create our own reality, and we're all capable of this. Every single one of us, every single one of you listening to this, you came to this show for a reason today. And I hope you really take this in and digest this, that you are capable of anything that you want to do, right? All of us can do. I don't care what the outside world shows us or screams at us or tries to present with us. We have the choice to look the other way and choose differently, right? Understand that we're whoever we want to be, and all of us are capable of that. It's it's time we stand up against our own suffering, right? We as humans love this suffering, right? We love to make ourselves suffer. We love, and I was thinking about this the other day because there was something I saw, and I don't know, it was a story or whatever, and it was sad, and this man was like, I don't even remember the pretense of it. I just remember thinking that this man was, suffering in this story, and I'm thinking, my heart went out to this person, right? I felt so bad for them, and I was like, I wish they weren't going through that. And then a split second later, I was like, but why don't you feel that way about yourself when you suffer, when you make yourself suffer, right? With these terrible thoughts that you think about yourself, and, these ideas or these fears that you repeat on loop in your mind. Why don't you feel bad for your own self when you make your own self suffer? And so I just want to remind you of that we all have a choice in this, and we can choose to be our biggest fan. We can choose to believe in ourselves. We can choose to step up and shed that old coat of baggage, I guess you would say, that has been around us for so long, right? This heavy coat of, like a coat of cement, right? That's weighing us down, right? We have the choice to exit that and make different choices going forward. And part of that is deciding that you run your own show, right? That you get to believe what you want to believe. And you are a sovereign being, and you create your own reality. And no one can interfere with that unless we let them, right? So I think it's so important to remember that. It's so important to start to fill our minds with things that encourage that, right? Like, instead of consuming hours and hours of negative, scary, sad media, why don't we start looking at other things, right? Why don't we start learning new skills? Why don't we start feeding our mind and our spirit and our body in different ways that encourage us, that lift us up, right? That take us towards that light, right? Instead of going down the rabbit hole of darkness and hell and just the suffering, right? And that's why I think 2020 was an inside job, because it was so personal for all of us, right? It was so personal. And I talk about the Great Awakening a lot on here, and there's nobody outside of us that's going to come and save us, right? The government's not coming to save you with a $600 check or whatever they end up doing, right? And the government doesn't have the answers for you, right? You have the answers for you. You have that power within you. You have enough wisdom and knowledge and enough, desire, I think, and even you have the power to pull that out of yourself, right? If you feel like you don't know, or how can I possibly do that? Or, that's not me, right? That's everybody else, but that's not me. And that's not true. It's absolutely not true. All of us have this. It's not a skill that's encouraged. It's not a skill that's often practiced. I mean, I remember when I started, like when my awakening happened, I think it's been probably almost going on 6 years now. I mean, I can remember at the beginning feeling like, I don't know any of these answers. How could I know? Who am I to know, right? But who are you not to know, right? Why wouldn't you know? Why do you think everybody else knows something but you don't, right? Why do we always seek out the answers from, somebody on Instagram or somebody on, YouTube or whatever? Why don't we just take a few minutes to go within and decide what our own internal compass is telling us, right? We all have that ability. It's within all of us. It just takes practice. And once you start, and once you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and yes, you may mess up, and yes, it may not be right, but who cares, right? That's what happens when you practice things, right? Nobody expects you to be perfect from day one, and you don't have to be, right? The key with this is to step into our own power this way, like step into our own power and just trust ourselves and know that we have the answers. We're the ones, us, you and I, you listening. You are the one with the power to control your life. You create your own reality. No doubt about it. I don't care what's going on in the outside world. We all create it. And so we get the choice. Do we want to live in hell, or do we want to move towards the light? And yes, sometimes it may be harder to move towards the light than other times, but what's the alternative? What's the alternative? Do we sit down and just pull the covers over our head and say it's over, or I'm done? Or do we actually stand up for ourselves and fight for ourselves, right? Speak up for ourselves. Do those things that support yourself, right? Like I said, like it's so easy to feel everyone else's suffering, but why don't we feel our own, right? Why don't we start to shift that out of that suffering mentality and mindset and move towards something that feels good, right? We can feel good. It's okay to feel good, right? It's okay to have success. It's okay to win. It's okay to want yourself to be successful. There's nothing wrong with any of that. It's all perfectly fine, and you get to have it if you choose it. So I know it's been a painful year. It's you're not alone. It's been that way for all of us. But that doesn't mean that's how it's always going to be, right? Because I know I fell into that trap too. And so as we think about going forward in 2021, we get to decide, right? We get to decide that, I'm starting a new book of time, right? My new book of time contains this. This is how my life is going to go, right? This is how my days are. These are the kind of people I'm around. This is how I feel when I wake up in the morning, right? This is how I changed my life 4 years ago now. That I designed it. I saw it in my head first before I ever saw anything in reality that would give me any inkling that what I was thinking in my head was remotely possible. But it was, and I did it, and it happened, and you can do it too. And so I think if we start to look at this next year and create our own book of time, right? Write out, like, what do we want our life to be? How do we want our days to be? What job do you want? What do you want to see? What do you want to experience in the world, right? All of that kind of stuff, it matters. It makes a difference. It may seem hopeless and it may seem pointless today, but I promise you, I guarantee you it is not. I've lived it, I've done it, and you can do it too. So I want to leave you today with just a quick story to remind you also of how big the universe is, how there's more going on than we can ever see, that we're just, we're zoomed in at the microscopic level, but if we pull out at that bigger level, bigger things are happening that we can never know. So the story is about my dog. So I told you guys I got a dog. It's probably been a couple months ago, and it's honestly been one of the best things. I just absolutely love this dog. It's been so fun to have him. And so every morning when I get up, I let him out, and then it's cold out right now, so he comes back in and lays by me in the bed, and I put the heating pad on him, so he can warm up because, yes, my dog is super spoiled. But I sit there and I talk to him all the time. So this isn't, out of the ordinary, but I talk to him and I tell him about how good his day is going to be, right? Because I know what's going to happen during the day. I know I'm going to take him on a walk. I know I'm going to take him for a car ride. And he loves those things, right? I know I'm going to give him, bacon later in the day, which he absolutely loves. So I sit there in the morning and I tell him, your day is going to be so great, right? We're going to do this. You're going to get to go for a walk. You're going to, and I name off all the wonderful things that we're going to do that day. And then I think about that for my own self, right? I think about, in my own life, like, okay, so my day's going to be great because of this, right? And so I was thinking about that this morning as I was talking to the dog and telling him, how great today was going to be. And I was thinking about that. That's similar to what happens in the universe, right? Like the universe knows all the amazing things that are to come. But just like my dog, we don't know, right? We're going through the day and we don't know because we don't have that bigger view of things, but the universe does. And there's more than we can see right now. There's more than meets the eye. There's more going on. There's more being planned for us. There's more being possible for us. There's more doors that are opening for us than we can see right now. So just like my dog, I think we all have to take that level of trust and believe that that's what's coming for us, right? Believe that this bigger picture is playing out right now in ways that we can't possibly see. But when we start to decide how we want the future to go, we decide how we want our reality to be. We decide that, this is my future book of time and this is how this is going to go. That's when we start moving towards the light. That's when we start actually, again, using our power that we have, that you may doubt today, but I promise you that you have. We're using that power to move ourselves forward and create the reality we want. So remember, there's one thing I can leave you with moving forward. You are a sovereign being and you create your own reality. And there is so much power in that. I hope you'll take that and run with it as we move into 2021. All right, so that's it for this week on our topic of 2020 was an inside job. I hope you found this inspiring. I hope it gave you a new perspective. I hope it gave you some hope moving into 2021. That was my intent. So, all right. So just a reminder, I do have a new series I started on BitChute called Reality Management. This is where I do some quick 5-minute videos in between the podcasts, just to get some other thoughts out that don't always make it on the podcast. So my BitChute channel is in the show notes. I'll link to that. Also, remember my Telegram channel. I have my free personal awakening map in that channel. It's pinned at the top of the page. The channel link is in the show notes. Please join that channel. I think using that personal awakening map would be a great way to start 2021. Also, I do have my 33 Days of Magic course. That would also be an amazing way for you to start 2021. So that's it for 2020. I'm here for you. I love you all. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth.